Hello and welcome to another episode of the Shoremens Series, episode 2. This week, joining me here in the studio is North's Premiership fly half Angus Sinclair. Talk about his journey through Japan and some big news announcement and what he might be up to now. Stay tuned. Angus Sinclair, g'day and welcome to the Shoremens Series. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Jack. Good to be here.
Mate, we did this the other day and it didn't quite work, and you had a little bit of a better backdrop. Tell us about where you were and maybe where you are now.
I'd probably argue I'm in a better place now, back at the farm at Cowra. Just drove over from Dubbo this morning. I was over in Dubbo for the weekend with Grace and her family. So
Yeah,
had
nice.
Mother's Day over there and played a bit of golf and had a good time.
How good. Speaking of Grace, you've got some big news that you announced last week. Do you want to give an insight to the members and fans what that is?
Yeah, definitely. Grace and I got engaged last weekend over here in Cowra. We sort of had a bit of the whole team here, the whole family here were in on the little secret, and somehow we managed to keep it that way. And we set up a big bonfire in the paddock and got her up there, and it was actually a bit of a funny story. I lit the fire before I was going to propose to her, and I had hidden the ring and some champagne in the buggy that I took up there in a little hidden compartment. And I went back to the buggy to get the ring, and she said to me, No, we need more diesel. So I was like, all right. Went back, poured some more diesel on the fire, was carrying the diesel back to the buggy, and then she yelled out again, we need more diesel. So I was like, Jesus, woman. Anyway, I went to the fire, poured about 10 litres of diesel on the bloody thing, and finally got back to the buggy, got the ring out and manned up and got down on one knee and popped the question. And it was a great day. All my family was here and Grace's family drove over from Dubbo as well. So it was a really special day.
Yeah, how good. And Grace has been a big part of the North supporter group in the last couple of years. So officially welcome to the North family. That's great. Mate, you are back in Australia and you've had a little hiatus in Japan. I just want to touch on that for the moment, but we'll go back to the beginning. How did you find out about Japan and give us a bit of insight into what that was like?
Yeah, so obviously Simon Cron is the head coach of Toyota over there now. And he sort of got in contact just after the North season last year. They'd had they had a couple of players get busted for cocaine use, which is obviously a big no-no, but especially in Japanese culture, it's there's a lot of shame and dishonor that comes with that. So one of those players was a number 10, and there was an opportunity for a new guy to come in, and he just got in touch and asked if I was interested, and I jumped at the chance. I was, any chance to play in a professional environment and also to be coached by him again is something you don't say no to. So, last November, packed my bags and headed over, and Grace sort of came over a couple of months later after she'd finished her uni. But no, it was a great experience. Obviously, cut short with the current situation, but we loved our 5 months there. Just wish it would have been a little bit longer.
Yeah, how good. And not only did they sign yourself, they signed some big names within World Rugby. Can you give us an insight into who they signed and what it was like playing against some real superstars of the game?
Yeah, so obviously Kieran Reid and Philly LaRue were the two big name signings Toyota brought in last season. Playing with them was pretty awesome. They sort of came in about 6 weeks into pre-season because obviously they'd had the World Cup and needed a bit of a break after that. But playing with them and getting to know them was pretty cool. I mean, Kieran Reid in particular is a fantastic human being. He's just a down-to-earth, good bloke, and obviously a pretty awesome rugby player. Like, just watching him at training, he'd just somehow run through a 5-meter gap that I don't even know where that came from on the field, but he's just one of those guys always in the right spot at the right time, and his skills, just little touches here and there, offloads, tip-ons, drawing defenders in is outstanding. And then Villy is probably, one of those rare sort of maverick type rugby players that just loves to back himself. He'll put chip kicks in. Like, I think one game he put 12 chip kicks in and 10 of them would have come off. It's just, he just has that knack of pulling off those things, cut out passes. And then the only thing is he doesn't hit any rucks, which obviously Cronny wasn't too impressed with. But no, I think it was really cool to learn off those guys and see how they operate, and hoping to bring some of that back to North.
Yeah, nice. Two genuine superstars. So you debuted in round 1 against Yamaha. Can you give us a bit of idea of how you guys went in the opening couple of rounds? Yep.
So come off the bench in round 1 against Yamaha. I think scores were pretty tight when I came on. Then we found ourselves behind by a try, chasing the game, and we'd scored a try, and I had a kick to level it up, which I missed, and that was pretty frustrating. But it was also a big learning. I remember after we'd scored, there'd probably only 1 or 2 minutes to go, and Villy said, "Hurry up, take the kick so we can win," sort of thing. And I probably rushed it rather than just taking my usual time, going through my usual process and putting it over. But that was a good learning. After that, we still had the chance to win the game. We made a break off a set piece launch, and then got tackled right down in the opposition, sort of 15 meters out. And unfortunately, Quagga Smith turned it over, and they kicked the ball out, and game over. But that was a bit disappointing. We lost 31-29 in that game. But awesome to make my debut, and the crowd that day we were at Yamaha, and they were very vocal and crazy. If anyone that's sort of been to the World Cup or experienced a bit of Japanese rugby, they're very passionate supporters, and they sort of get very animated at any half break or big tackle or flick pass or anything like that. But yeah, then we rolled into round 2. I actually came back for Hugh's wedding round 2, so I missed out on that one. The boys played in front of 37,000 Japanese fans that day against Panasonic. So just shows you the level of interest and building support that the fans are having in Japan. I think it's going to be a rugby market that's just going to continue to grow. But yeah, came back into the squad round 3 on the bench again. Only played 10 minutes, but we flogged Hino. And then I had my first start in round 4. We played against Honda, and just we're kind of lucky that Camilla and Hamish, my sister and brother, obviously came over to visit and to watch a game. And just fortunately enough, I was starting in that one and got to play the full 80 minutes. And I was really happy with how I played. I think it was one of the best performances I've had in the last sort of 2 or 3 years. So sort of kicked really well. I think I hit maybe 9 from 11, and we won maybe 60-20 odd. So that was a great day. They actually were in the middle of the Honda crowd because they wanted to sit on halfway, and they still to this day sing some of the Honda Heat chants. It's a little bit like schoolboy rugby over there. They've got their head cheerleader, and they all follow their chants. I think the one they always say is Honda Hito.
Love it.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool experience playing over there.
Yeah, right. And, not only the rugby's different, but give us a little bit of insight into the different culture. I mean, you you finish your game here at North Sydney Oval and you head up to the Union Hotel and hang out with some mates. What happens after the Japanese game? You mentioned the other day, and you see a lot on TV of bowing and whatnot. What's all that about?
Yeah, so I mean, they're a very respectful culture. So after the game, rather than shake hands with the opposition straight away, you will have a small team huddle, obviously, but then go into each quadrant of the field and bow to the crowd and in a line, and even to the opposition supporters, and they all clap and very respectful and happy. So it's a nice thing to do, I think. The game that Hamish and Camilla came to, we went to Yakiniku, which is where you have a nice little barbecue in the middle and cook your meat up and have a few beers. And we ended up at a bit of karaoke after that, which was good fun.
Well, they jagged a pretty good game. Hey, you mentioned the other day when we caught up, you watched a few of the other Aussie superstars run around with one of the other teams.
Yeah.
Can you shed a bit of light on that story you told me?
Yeah. So I think probably round 5 we were playing against Suntory, who are obviously one of the big teams, and they've got the likes of Matt Giddo, Samu Kerevi, Sean McMahon, Sam Talakai, another Aussie. And I was back on the bench that game, and they gave us a bit of a hiding. But I will always remember this one moment where, growing up, Matt Giddo was probably one of my heroes. He was, such an amazing player.
Just a superstar.
Yeah, he sort of straightened off his right foot, went to the line, dummied inside, got between 2 defenders, and then offloaded behind the back to Samu Kerevi, and Kerevi just strolled over, and I was on the bench and I started clapping because I was like, oh, shit, that was good. But then I was like, well, probably shouldn't be clapping for that. But, it was pretty cool to play against guys like that. I think that game I came on at maybe 50-0 or something like that with 20 to go. So not much to do. But, I mean, I got my first try in that game, which was pretty cool, and kicked a couple of conversions. So kind of did everything I could. But we're up to on a hiding to nothing at that stage.
Yeah, obviously one of the big teams and some genuine superstars in that team. Hey, so when you arrive and you don't know the language, or a little bit of language, how does that all play out with translators on the training field, in the team room? What's that look like?
Yeah, I tried to learn a little bit before I went, but you kind of do have to listen to it and speak it every day to sort of absorb a bit and learn. But there is 3 full-time translators at the club. I'd say there'll be maybe 15 foreign players. There is probably 5 coaches that are from Australia, New Zealand, South Africa. So a lot of the coaching comes through in English, but the translator's always there to translate it either from English to Japanese or Japanese to English. If, for example, we're in a team meeting, all the foreign players sit at the back, and the translator just stands behind us, and if there's a Japanese speaker at the front, he'll say his sentence, and then the translator will repeat back in English what he was saying. It does definitely get a bit of time to get used to, because you get the same message twice, and you're almost trying to gauge the emotion of the coach in Japanese, but getting it sort of deadpan and back in English. But the translators are awesome. They do a fantastic job. But yeah, I do remember the first time I was, obviously being a fly half, you speak a lot in team meetings and team huddles and stuff. I remember the first time I kind of forgot that I had to say a sentence, then pause and wait for them to translate. And they're like, whoa. And I was like, oh yeah, sorry. So but after a week or so, you get used to it. But we did, and fortunately you do have a few players in each team, or in our team, that could speak both. So there's a winger, Jamie Henry, number 8, Vaha, and a centre, Male, who's from New Zealand. two Kiwis and a Tongan. They've been in Japan for a long time, so they can translate messages on the field when you don't have the translators out there, obviously. But there was a trial game I had where we didn't have any English speakers on the field, and that was pretty difficult.
Yeah, with a mouthful of mouth guard and under fatigue, trying to think of a different language, it's probably not the easiest to do. They must be long meetings though, if everything's said twice.
Yeah, especially when Cronny gets on his rants that he's pretty good. But yeah, they are long, bit longer than you expect. But it just is. It comes with we're playing in their country, so you got to be patient with it and be understanding and just absorb. I tried to absorb as much of the language as I could, so you could kind of pick up on things. And by the end, I was pretty good with words and not so much long sentences, but being able to sort of give a little bit of direction, say hello, thank you, all the rest of it, order food, etc.
Yeah, and rugby's got its own language that it can sort of work out on the run.
Yeah, so definitely.
When you get over to Japan, what's the setup like? Toyota, you're based not quite in Tokyo, but a little bit south. What are they sort of up with?
Yeah, so Toyota is kind of on the outskirts of another big city called Nagoya, which is, I think it's just under 2 hours on the bullet train south of Tokyo. And most of the foreign boys in particular live sort of halfway in the suburbs of Nagoya, basically. So it's about 30 minutes into training. But yeah, the clubs over there are really good. They set you up with an apartment and help you out with obviously getting all that sorted and finding a car, driving around a little Toyota.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah,
good.
Yeah.
So you mentioned you're 5 or 6 rounds in, and obviously COVID sort of 19 happens. What did that look like for you guys? You got postponed, then you're back, and then you were off. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so we were 6 rounds in, and then obviously this coronavirus hit, and Japan was one of the first ones to see it, obviously being close to China, but with the cruise ship, I can't remember the name of it, that was sitting off the shore that had all those cases. So we got postponed. They told us initially 2 weeks we were going to be postponed for after round 6. And Cronny being Cronny put us into a mini preseason and sort of, which was great. We made some really good gains in that period, and we just come off a win, so we were building nicely. And then we kind of came back into training for expecting a game a couple of weeks later but they actually postponed the comp for another, I can't remember, it was 2 weeks or 3. There's no way we would have played anyway because of what was going on. So that was kind of hard. We trained really hard, ready for the next game, and then you're back into another little mini preseason. But Grace and I sort of saw it as an opportunity to explore a bit of Japan. We kind of did 5 days training, and then would have 4 days off, like over a weekend, and then a couple of extra days. So we actually went up to a place called Hakuba and went skiing a couple of times and explored the mountains up there, which was a pretty awesome part of the world. So, and then we'd kind of come back from that expecting to resume again. To be honest, I kind of knew, looking at other global events, sporting competitions, that it wasn't going to
no chance.
resume. It wasn't going to resume, but the coaching staff was all pretty confident it was. And I guess over there, everyone was maybe a little bit naive to what was going on globally, and they didn't really register that. But finally, once our country started to lock down, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa is where the bulk of the foreigners are from. Once their borders were talking about closing and quarantine periods and whatever, they kind of clued on, and they gave us the option to stay or to come home and then return if it was likely that the comp would start again. But there was, I love Japan, but we sort of saw that as, let's get out of here and get home and be with family and while we could.
Yeah, nice. And so you did, and obviously landed back in Cowra with a bit of fresh country air. What did that quarantine period look like for you? You mentioned you missed the hotel lockdown, which was pretty good.
Yeah, thank God for that, because I don't think Grace would still be with me. Locked in a hotel room for 2 weeks wouldn't have been too fun, but we just came straight back. Hugh and Hamish left my car at the airport for us. We just jumped straight in off the plane and headed straight down to Cowra. And fortunately, we got a spare cottage here, and Grace and I stayed in there for the 2 week period. We and then after being locked up, I guess for the last period in Japan, we were pretty keen for open space and pretty fortunate to come down here. And we just did a bit of work for Dad, poking around, doing odd jobs. And we weren't allowed in the main house. Everyone was very cautious of us. They used to leave food out or when it was smoko time, a little coffee out the back door for us, so we could just walk over, take our coffee, and just sit outside and have that. It was pretty nice after that 14 days when we were allowed to come back in the house. And I think we had a big roast lamb that night, and it was good to be able to talk to everyone in close proximity again.
Yeah, nice. Bit of Cowra lamb. You're always raving about that.
Mate, best lamb in the world.
So obviously back home in Australia now, and what's next rugby-wise for yourself?
Yeah, so just before I left, I found out that I wasn't going back to Toyota. They had signed another player from New Zealand, a young fly half. I kind of knew that from the get-go. Even going over there, I was told it was like 90% it was only going to be 1 year. But at the same time, it was pretty disappointing not to go back, because I was really enjoying it. I thought I'd been performing well and really enjoying that professional environment where you actually get to have the time to fine-tune all your skills. But, that's part of professional sport. And at this stage, it looks like, I'll be back playing for North this season when we can get back underway, which will be pretty cool.
Yeah, well, hopefully that's sooner rather than later, and can't wait to have you back in the red and black, and obviously back at North Sydney Oval. Mate, thanks for your time. But before I let you go, is there anything else you'd like to give our members or supporters out there?
Yeah, just a message for all the members and supporters and sponsors as well. Just to stick by the club. I know obviously there's a lot of probably financial strain at the moment, but it's really important that, especially with Australian rugby sort of being dragged through the dirt a bit, that we all stick together, because club rugby and in particular Shute Shield is such a shining light for this sport. And, we obviously need the support of all our sponsors and members and fans to keep this club going. So stick with us. Hopefully we're back on the field soon, and I don't know what it's going to look like in terms of crowds and stuff, but hopefully you can cheer us on and charge towards hopefully another premiership.
Yeah, fantastic. Could not have said it better myself. Mate, as I said, thanks for your time. Get back to a bit of clean, fresh country air, and we'll see you back in Sydney hopefully very soon.
Cheers, Jack. Thanks, mate.
Thanks, mate.